Mhm. Not really sure if it started, but go ahead, introduce yourself, what you do, who you help, all of that good stuff.
All right. Hello, I'm Fiona. And what I like to do is, before I answer that, I have a question. Are you someone who is working so hard, but you never find a way of being able to actually get above and to always feel that there's one bill that comes after another and you're still constantly struggling? If you answered yes to that, that's what I do. I help people to come up with some wealth strategies. So they're not just making money, they're able to make wealth, build wealth, and enjoy life the way that they want to without having to worry about unexpected expenses coming up. And I also help people when it comes to their trauma because a lot of times we've had trauma from childhood, and that trauma from childhood impacts our behavior, it impacts our habits, and it impacts the relationships and how we interact with everybody. And very often we don't even realize that that is the cause of it and how we are. So I like to make people aware of that and just kind of talk to them, support them in a non-judgmental way, because unfortunately, a lot of people do struggle with being judged, and they hide who they really are because they're afraid of what other people will think about it. So I work instead on helping people to feel safe and comfortable in a space, and then work through what their struggles are and how they would like to get supported for that.
Thank you so much for sharing that. What I would really like to know is how you got into doing those different things.
Yeah. I've been in retail for over 15 to 17 years, and I was a manager, like I am a manager there for that. And one of the things that I really noticed is when I was working with the team and I was coaching them, that a lot of times there's things outside of the workspace or um, things internally that was impacting their work and impacting with their connections and their ability of working together in a team. So I spent a lot of time focusing on the positivity and creating a good culture for them in that space. And it really made me realize the amount of people that struggle without speaking because they just kind of mask it or push it aside or bury it down. And they just do and behave the way they believe they're supposed to behave. But there's always that little small thing that comes up that they don't realize is impacting how they are. So I did find it's very hard for people to communicate and be open about that. So I started to do coaching that I called self-love coaching. And as I started talking to people, because I really love that, I also struggled with it for a very long time because I was one of my trauma triggerhoods from childhood was being sexually assaulted as well as being neglected when I was a teenager because my mom was very busy. So those really impacted me. And it wasn't until about 5.5 years ago that I realized I was basically done with life. I just couldn't do it anymore. But I didn't want to hurt my son. I didn't want him growing up in the same struggles, the same pain that I had and that I've been pushed to try to get through. So I instead decided to do better for myself. And when I started to do better for myself, it did change my team, but I also wanted to help support other people. So when I started to share self love, when I was asking people about it, talking to them about it to see if they were needing support, a lot of people are like, well, no, I don't need to do affirmations. I don't want to stare in a mirror. It doesn't work. And they were talking about a lot of that superficial, like, oh, I don't meditate. Oh, I do journal and stuff. And I was just realized that people when they think of self-love, they think of that self-care, just like taking care of yourself, like your hair, shopping, whatever the case is. But for me, self-love was about the boundaries, the discipline, about finding like that emotional regulation, being able to be resilient, having compassion for others so that you're not judging them and making them feel welcomed and seen. So I felt like people had that surface level impression of self-love, And I really liked the deeper part of it, like the one that you know that you're worthy and one that you know that you're deserving of it. And how to be confident is to celebrate the small things and to build that self-trust and to be able to help support yourself because that's where the confidence comes. But a lot of people think confidence is related to how other people perceive them, but it's how you actually feel inside of yourself. So, as I started talking to more people, I noticed that people who had the trauma, they were responding based on that. So I wanted to help support them because I know that that's a harder thing to get through because most traumas and experiences we have are from childhood. And when they're from like 20, 30 years ago, it's a lot harder to see them and it's a lot harder to recognize because it's been something we've been doing for so long that it's a lot harder to break those habits. And then I led into financial services because a lot of people who struggle with their self love, their self worth, and struggle with trauma often struggle with money, whether or not they're living paycheck to paycheck, they're hoarding it, they're spending it, but they're not set for success. They're not set to be able to support themselves or their families. And unfortunately for them, it's not their fault. It's just the system is broken. The system is set for a different type of economy than what we do have now. And a lot of people are struggling with it and they get stuck. And when they get stuck, it's very challenging to get out. So then that kind of snowballs on top of how they feel about themselves and about the trauma that they've been experiencing. So I kind of blend all of that together to be able to help support people because I believe it's all one and the same when you're working on becoming who we're supposed to be and the better person. Sorry, long explanation.
No, I thought that was really good, especially you talk about the self-love and self-care and how that's different than what people might think, "Oh, self-care is me just getting my nails done or something." Or
Mhm.
even like just journaling. It's more than that. It's self-love piece.
Yeah.
Um, so what I want to know is, did you invest in coaching or networking or any of those kinds of things?
Yes, I invested in quite a bit. When I first started, I was doing doTERRA for essential oils, and I came across a coach that talks about how to do like summits, how to network with other people, do collaborations to be able to grow your business and be able to help recruit people that way. But I realized the more I was learning how to do that, the more I fell in love with the actual coaching side of it and supporting people. So I did do some investments and I also invested in some programs that the style was not mine, but I didn't know that at the time. So I really had to go through some of those programs that didn't work to find something that did work and that was better suited to how I am. So I'm grateful for those experiences, as well as grateful for the ones that you work with a person, you decide to hire them, like for video editing, for example, and then you just realize it wasn't a great match and it didn't work out the right way. So everything's a learning experience, but it helps me to define who I am, who I want to work with, and really appreciate and value the people that do network. 'Cause I know that's something that you're really good at doing is kind of networking, connecting people together, and just sharing that. And that's to me, it's a lot of work. Like it's a lot of connections, it's a lot of growth, it's a lot of remembering things, and I think that's incredible to be able to have that ability and that drive to be able to do that. So um, yeah, I've definitely gotten to some networking groups before, had some support to be able to help with it. And it's nice to support other people and to see them do well and then just kind of help to have them help you as well when you're needing it. So
Sounds like you've been pretty busy. I'm wondering how you managed your time boundaries around all of those different things that you were doing.
um one of the things is I'm take at least half a day or one day that's just to myself what I like to do. So when I work my full-time job on the weekends so that I have, say like today, for example, and tomorrow off. So I could choose to work on my business. I could choose to work on something that I need less distractions from, or I could choose just to kind of rest, depending on how my body feels at that time. And I like to kind of create energy instead of just leaving it. So that kind of helps with the time boundaries as well. Because a lot of times when we struggle with time and we get really tired, it's because we don't have that energy that we're creating. We don't have, I wouldn't say it's like motivation because motivation comes after you do the actions, but a lot of times when we feel tired, we just stop. We don't do as much. We don't work as hard or as fast. So sometimes what I would do is like take a break and just dance or sing or listen to certain music, go for walks outside, and just think about some stuff that I want to talk about and share. Making sure that I don't have people randomly come to me. So I like to be open and support people, but at the same time, I kind of set that boundary. So if they reach out to me online, I'll ask them the questions like what they're interested in doing, what they worked on before, what has worked, what hasn't worked, and then just after a little bit of a conversation, then ask them if we can go on a call to help support them, so we can kind of go through it a bit better in person, so I can see their body language, see their energy, see where they really are, and that kind of helps then as well to weed out people that are just looking for that free advice, that's just coming in wanting to vent, wanting to talk, as well as when I support people just kinda, like, let them know the times that I'm available and see what they can fit into it, or if they have their calendars fit, see what time works for them. But just learning to say no and feeling empowered when you have to say no because you can't do everything for everybody and you can't support everyone, and it was a struggle for me for a while because, again, with that neglect trauma, one of the ways that I overcompensated was I needed to let everybody know they felt seen. I needed everybody to know that they felt heard. So every single conversation coming in to my messenger, including the scammers or the people that are like, "Oh, I need money, I need visas," or whatever it is, I was having conversations with them because I'm like, well, maybe they're just struggling. Maybe they're doing this because they haven't felt heard, they haven't felt seen. So I realized that was quite the drain on my energy too, because they weren't interested in being seen and heard. They were just interested in kind of like getting money or whatever it is. So I kind of learned that and I just did a quick small talk and just let it go or just recognize that, they're not necessarily looking for my support, my help. They're not looking for that friendship. And then I just move on that way.
Yeah, I think that's so important to set those boundaries. How has the way you network changed over time?
It changed a lot as I grew as a person as well. One of the things that I struggled with when I first started, because I started with the network marketing for doTERRA, Norwex first, doTERRA, and then I was always afraid to connect with people because I didn't think anyone would want to choose me. And I always felt like I was bothering people. And of course, when you first start, a lot of people say everyone's your client, everyone's your prospect. So ask all your family members and your friends. So I feel like that kind of sets everybody up right from the start to be scared and not as successful as they can be because not all family and friends are our clients. But if we're sharing and posting and doing the value and they're interested, then yes, they can do that. But people just because they're related to you does not mean they're necessarily going to be the ones that will say yes to you. Like when I started my financial services, they kind of mentioned the same thing. They're like, talk to your family and friends, share the presentation, like ask them to come to the presentation to learn so that you can see how it works so that you can start teaching it yourself. So I remember asking my mom and she's like, no, right? So instead of getting upset to like, you're my mom, you're supposed to support me when I'm doing something new, I was just like, okay, she's not interested. She's doesn't want to do it. So that's fine. It doesn't mean anything to do with me. Doesn't even have anything to do with her. It was just her saying no. So learning again with that whole self-love, the compassion, learning that I can accept a no because she's not where she wants to be or she's not interested. So that really helped. But it was hard when I first started because I was asking all the family and friends, and then they were all saying no, or then you'd see the posts where people are like, "Oh, this person, all they do is pitch and sales products, and, I'm not really interested." So it kind of made me scared that I was bothering people all the time. So over the last couple of years, I really or especially in the past year, I really focused on that growth and recognizing that if people respond to me or don't respond to me, it's not an indication of who I am. It's an indication of where they are at the moment, whether they're busy or they are interested, not interested. I can take it and fine tune it. And I think one of the biggest things is switching from everyone's being your client to just, like having that ability to grow connections. So just having a conversation with a new person, just ask them how they're doing, find out what things that they like, what things are very similar to you. So if they've got kids, then obviously that's something you can talk to and just kind of share that way. Or I enjoy horseback riding. So people that also enjoy horseback riding, we can have conversations that way. So it really changed being able to connect with them and being able to build that trust. And if we have that conversation, that I can see that I can help support them, then I mean, I may ask them, or they might look at my content and then just say, yes, I'm interested in learning more. Can you help with this? Like, this is something that I would need the support with. So, um, I found that that helped me network a little bit different and just doing more collaborations, asking people to help support mine, giving them a platform to share as well. So I usually do summits quite often throughout the year and then give them that space for them to talk in front of other people and just supporting even people that are doing the same thing, like if they're life coaches, self-love, um, agents as well for the insurance. I like to kind of comment on their posts to be able to help support them to boost theirs because the people that would work with them and resonate with them are not the same people for me. So knowing that I can help them, even with just one comment, makes a complete difference for me to be able to say that yes, their post now is going to go out to an extra 100 people, and that one out of that 100 could be the one that they need. So
Yeah, and I think that's important to point out that it's not about competing with everybody in your industry, but it's also getting outside of your industry and talking to people who are outside of that who need what you have to offer. So I love how you pointed that out. Would you
yeah.
say you're more introverted or extroverted, and how does that affect your networking strategies?
It's interesting because I feel like I kinda go back and forth a little bit. When I was younger, I was more extroverted because I enjoyed being around people, socializing. My husband's very introverted, like, even if he has friends, I'm like, "Go hang out with your friends," and he's like, "No, I'm fine," right? So he's okay being a homebody, so being around him, I did find that I got more introverted. I got more quiet because I started taking on like the way he was. So I love socializing. I love being around people. It makes me feel really good when I get that connection. But it took a while for me to kind of get back into recognizing that. And I find that a lot of people think like extroverted and introverted is more about being shy and quiet and or being very outgoing in life of the party. But I feel it just depends on how you like how your energy go flows and how someone who is extroverted their energy will rise when they're at parties and socializing and around people, and those that are introverted they'll usually have a way of draining because it's a lot harder to have those human interactions. So I feel like just knowing and listening to yourself as a whole. So some days I'm more extroverted, so I will be out and around. I'll be on the lives doing my stories. I'll be sharing really when I'm at work, interacting and engaging with the customers that are in the store with my team and stuff. And the days that I feel more introverted and quiet, where it's actually draining me to have those conversations, I kind of do keep a bit more to myself, or I give myself that space of just being by myself. A lot of times I'll go in my room because when my son is here, he's very, very high energy and he doesn't stop. Like, I know a couple weeks ago we were gonna do this interview, but he was here and like he jumps all the time and he's like moving around all the stuff, right? So it was a lot would have been a lot more challenging. So I like to go into the room where I'm like, okay, this is 5, 10 minutes for me just to build my energy as opposed to letting it be drained that way. So I do feel that it's moments, and I just listen to my body after I'm done different things that I'm doing with whether it's interactions or not. So if I'm happy, excited, I'll use that momentum to keep going. If I'm feeling a bit more tired and exhausted, then I'll go for a nap.
Yeah, it's important to pay attention to how you feel as well. Um, do you prefer networking in groups or having more one-to-one conversations?
I love groups. I've always been one that I enjoy stages, enjoy kind of I remember growing up, it was one of those things where people said like, "Oh, you like attention or you like being center of attention," and they made it sound like it was a bad thing and they just kind of dimmed that light and you struggled then with saying, "Oh, well, I'm not supposed to be in front of people. That would be bad because it would make you kind of conceited." And those were all the things that I played through as a kid and leading into a teenager and I struggled um I struggled with wanting to be in front of people for public speaking, being on stages and supporting people in larger groups and having that like one-on-one conversations or just even having sometimes one-on-one conversations because again that was like oh people don't want to look at me people don't want to talk to me I'm going to bother them and stuff so it took a lot of work to kind of get out of that shell and recognize that it's okay to want to be a center of attention it's okay to be on a stage and talk to a lot of people one of the reasons why I do like group networking as opposed to just one-on-one is that there's a lot more collective energy as well as there's a lot more minds and there's a lot more expertise and knowledge. So you really get the benefit of if it's done the right way, right, where there's a lot of engagement and interaction, but you get that benefit of learning from a lot of other people as well. So you have your own perspective based on your stories, your beliefs, how you grew up, the way you respond to stuff, and then someone else could have the same situation and see it completely different, and having that opportunity to learn that person's perspective really gives you a chance to think and say, "Yeah, you may not necessarily nobody's wrong, but it just has a different view and opinion on it." So I like that. One of the things that I do like about the one-on-ones though is it can get a lot more intimate, right? It's a lot more focused on one person. So depending on what's needed at the time, like if someone needs a bit more of that individual undivided attention, then that one-on-one can help support it. So, but personally, I think I do enjoy the group much better as opposed to the one-on-ones, just having that energy, that space, talking in front of a lot of people and stuff, and just hearing their thoughts and opinions.
Would you say getting comfortable being uncomfortable is part of the entrepreneur's skill set?
Yes, definitely. Doing things that scares you, facing what struggles most people do avoid, because it's very easy to avoid stuff. A lot of times, like if people are having arguments, for example, they might be frustrated and angry about one situation. Like earlier today, my son, he was angry because he was playing a video game, and I'm sure it was an adult, like he's a kid, but like they're or a teenager that's running around attacking him, and he was getting frustrated and upset because this person kept chasing him, and he just wanted to like try out some moves or something. So when he got frustrated to the point where he walked away from it, I was trying to say like, "Oh, lead that person into a group of other people so someone will attack him, and that then he'll be distracted and he won't chase you anymore." But he turned his anger on me instead because I was the person that was there. It was easier to be mad at me as opposed to himself not being able to get away from that person. And a lot of times we do that. We avoid being uncomfortable. We avoid looking at what's bothering us and turn it to something that's a bit more simple, something that's like a bit more stupid to be upset about. So he was upset that I was speaking to him as opposed to him being upset with the fact that he could not get away from that person that was bothering him. And it really triggered him. And he didn't know how to manage and deal with those emotions yet. So the easiest way to do it was to say that it was my fault for speaking to him. So I kind of trying to teach him how to do that, but we all like it's natural to avoid stuff that we are seeing as uncomfortable because our brain thinks of it as being a negative thing and an unsafe thing because we've never tried it before. So we shy away and avoid those type of things. I like to share with my clients that our brains are kind of like a toddler. Like our mind is what's powerful that allows us to visualize, to attract, and to manifest different things and to really think things through, to be strategic about it. And our brain is that one that's kind of like a toddler that is very primal within its needs of being having to be safe. So it kind of creates patterns and it kind of keeps us in situations and scenarios that may not necessarily be okay. Such as being going from one bad relationship to another because we know the outcome, we know what's expected, we know how that's going to play out. So changing our brain by giving it evidence and say, well, why am I feeling uncomfortable right now? Why is that making me uncomfortable? Is this really scary? What's the worst that can happen? What's the best that can happen? And just kind of working through those different scenarios and teaching your brain that it will be okay to be uncomfortable. One my clients, I tell them like keep it very basic. One of the things that he struggles with is when he's uncomfortable, he's nervous and he's scared. He'll wash his hands very often because he feels dirty. He feels like he needs to clean his hands. So I told him one way of working on that is to keep his brain very basic and just look at his hands and say clean, yes. And don't even say anything else. And once he's like, yeah, he said I told it was okay. And I'm like, don't say it was okay because okay means you're settling because it was something that was better, but you're okay with what you did. So he now just says clean, yes, and he doesn't have to wash his hands. Like he'll if they're not dirty or anything like that. So I kind of look at the brain that way. And I love doing self-care. I touched a little bit on it when you talked about self-care where a lot of people are like, "Oh, I can get my hair done, I can go shopping." They really take care a lot of people know the grooming, like the brushing your teeth, getting showers. A lot of people focus on that side of the care. The physical, like eating healthy, exercising, all those things. But a lot of times we forget the brain, we forget about the mind, and we forget about like the spirit, the our soul, the environmental the social, family, finances. So one of the ways that I like to challenge the brain to help with being uncomfortable is learning new languages, learning new instruments, doing something that's new and within my control that's not as scary and it doesn't have any external influences to be able to test my brain and stretch it better. So when I do have something that's more uncomfortable show up for like when it comes to the business and entrepreneurship, that it's not as scary because your brain got used to doing the uncomfortable, scary things. And the uncomfortableness is different for every single person. Someone who loves sharing and being center of attention would probably really excel at being on camera. And the people that are shy, nervous, and don't like being the center of attention are going to avoid it, right? So it's a lot of different ways that it will show up for different people, but knowing that it's okay and just challenging your brain to say that you're safe and you're still fine and to try it anyways and see how it happens. Mm.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on tapping into your intuition when networking?
I think it's very important. It kind of goes back to that brain keeping us safe, that mind exploring and manifesting. It comes with the gut as well, like, how people will respond, how you should respond, paying attention to like the energy and the feelings around and the tension. So very often people say stuff, but they don't necessarily mean what they're saying. Like when you first go to networking groups or you go meeting people, they're going to want to put their best foot forward, unless they're the people that are like, I'm so confident, I don't care, or the people that are like, you know what, I hate the world, I don't really care if you know that I do. So very often, everybody puts their best foot forward. They're saying exactly what that they want you to say. So it's kind of taking that moment of feeling the energy out, feeling like, because you can't cheat energy, you can't treat that feelings that you have and stuff. So that's why I like to listen to the intuition then, because it kind of one example is like if they're speaking, they say like, "Oh yeah, I like helping people," but they're ignoring everyone else around them and they're not asking questions of the people that they're speaking to, then it's like, are you really helping people or are you more focused on yourself, right? So if you're someone that wants to serve and help people, then you're more often going to be asking questions about those people. Or if someone says something, be like, "Well, why do you feel that way? Why are you thinking that? Like what led you to that?" Right? So it just kind of opens up to let that other person be seen and heard. So like the different actions that way, but a lot of times that comes from like your intuition and your gut and just saying like something doesn't feel right, something isn't necessarily set the right way that we're supposed to. So I definitely trust intuition very often. And um, sometimes you get it right, sometimes you get it wrong. But most often, when I'm like, this person will be amazing, I think they're going to be great for working, then it's a lot easier or networking or collaborating with them. Then I feel like that's just that feeling of you get when your energies connect.
Thank you for sharing that. Any closing remarks or things you wanted to add?
Um, I think just networking is very important and just knowing who you are as a person in order to be able to create that interactions with others is very important too. So having the right mindset, that openness, because when we network with people, we're going to find people that are completely different than us. And that's one of the things that I really love, and that's the beauty of it. And then being able to have different strengths. So I know one of my strengths is being able to be strategic and arranging stuff. When it comes to organizing things, I'm not the greatest being able to kind of set that structure to go. So having someone else that has that is very important as well. So like knowing who you are, what strengths you bring to the table, being able to collaborate, like you mentioned at one point too, is having collaborations with people outside your industry, So for the financial services, for example, having someone that's like a real estate person would help too, because if I'm talking to someone that says they want to plan on saving up and buying a house in a couple of years, well, having a real estate person that can help support them and have that and knowing our values and stuff as well is very important to be able to have those connections. So I think really knowing ourselves, that we don't take time to sit down and find out who we are and not who we are based on the people we're interacting with, right? So I'm a different person with my son. I'm a different person with my husband. I'm a different person at work. I'm a different person here. And I'm a different person with myself. So, really knowing who I am with myself and the person that I want to be, and just being able to bring that person out to the other ones. So, obviously, your interactions with people. Like my response to my husband's going to be completely different than it would be my response to my son. So that does bring that individual person. But me being the root person of who I am with the compassion, not judging and saying, okay, well, let's validate this, let's figure this out, let's find a solution is really going to help me and help with other interactions and stuff. So I think it's very important. That's kind of where it goes back to that self love. That's not really self love. It's knowing that person that you are and just being that when you're around everybody because it's a lot easier and it's not so tiring when you're pretending to be someone or being someone that you're not actually are at the root of yourself.
Thanks so much. Was there anything else?
No, just thank you so much for having me here and giving me the opportunity to share. And if anyone does have any questions, want to find out more information, I'm open to having conversations, to chat, to be able to go on a call, to be able to help support, or if someone is interested in getting some support for their stuff too. Like, I love supporting other people, I love encouraging them, and I love commenting on their posts when I can, boosting the algorithms, and just being there for people because I know how hard it is to show up and do these things and to be online. Because even if you're sharing something that's a positive, good post, you're still being online vulnerable because you're still putting yourself out there for other people to say whether they agree, disagree, that those haters that are out there. So I think it's amazing when you can show up and be online and do what you need to do to share and help serve people. And I want to be able to help support that as well.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.